Just over 4 years since Mary Ann Brault was killed by her husband at Holly Tree Racquet Club in Wilmington.
Brault's daughter says it came after years of domestic abuse. And now she wants to turn that tragedy into hope for others. WECT's Ava Brengord talked to Rachel Knowles today as she continues to honor her mother's life with a charity tennis tournament.
For the past 4 years, the community has come together to honor Mary Ann Brault, a woman who was murdered at her son's tennis practice because of domestic abuse. Now her daughter is working to ensure her pain does not happen to anyone else. This traumatic scene in 2021 was the backdrop of the worst day of Rachel Knowles' life. It was at her 12-year-old brother's tennis practice at Holly Tree Racquet Club where her mother, Mary Ann Brault, was ambushed, shot and killed by her husband, Knowles' stepfather.
You know, he used that opportunity. He used my mother's love.
Having endured years of domestic abuse, Knowles says her mother experienced a pain so many men and women continue to struggle with. And she's now working to bring attention to that with a charity tennis tournament called Raise a Racquet. So far, she's raised over $60,000 for victims of domestic violence, and she's hoping to raise even more.
So this is something that's incredibly important. That has really grown beyond just me and my family's story. This is something that is bigger than our story.
Now, if you would like to play for a good cause, registration for Raise a Racquet is now open. It's here at Impey Park in Wilmington at the end of the month. For more details, be sure to visit this story on our website. In Wilmington, Ava Brengord, WECT News.